California, known as the Golden State, finds itself facing economic, social, and political crossroads. Rising crime, substance abuse, the grip of addictive drugs, and the public display of mental illness have fueled a sense of urgency. So the question is, do we, the voters, possess the knowledge and the will to select those candidates who address these pressing issues? My name is Jim Connor. Welcome to Game Changers Silicon Valley. My guest for this topic is Anita Chen, a candidate for California's 17th Congressional District. Anita, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start with a brief overview of what has led you to decide to run for elected office, your first time out, and what are your thoughts about the priorities of voters here in Silicon Valley?
Sure, yeah. I have been an educator for the last 10 years and have seen California change. I've lived my whole life here, so I know the different trends that are going on. Another great privilege of mine is that I've gotten to travel all around the world, Asia, Africa, Middle East, Europe, and it seemed that anywhere that I went, I would find stories of women and children that were being exploited, particularly in sex trafficking. Those stories always broke my heart, and I always wondered what I could do. But this summer, through the movie Sound of Freedom, I found that these atrocities were happening in our own country, the country that I love, and because I'm from the Bay Area, like in my own backyard. And I remember sitting in that movie theater and knowing that my life could no longer be the same, that I had to do something.
Okay. I haven't seen that movie. I probably will at some point. Can you give me a brief insight of to what extent is trafficking of women taking place in the United States or in California, for that matter?
Yeah, so trafficking is a very prevalent issue all throughout the United States. There's particular hotspots in the large cities like New York or San Francisco and San Jose. The Bay Area in particular is a hotspot. Unfortunately, number one, it's very hard to measure and track because it's an illicit activity. But number two, there's been a lack of measurement to understand how prevalent the issue is. And like we say in the Silicon Valley, if we can't measure it, it's hard to manage it. However, a few things that I do know is, number one, that 80% of the trafficking cases in the United States are of American youth, meaning that it's not primarily women and children that are being trafficked globally into the United States. It's many American youth that are being exploited.
Do you have a sense of the numbers?
Right. There's really a wide range of numbers. The number I have is 100 to 300,000 throughout the United States.
Is that with the FBI that they're tracking this, or who tracks these numbers?
The FBI does their own numbers, the DOJ, Homeland Security. So there's a wide range of numbers, and I would really recommend that you do your own research and find more about the situation.
How long does this last for a child? And is this young girls, young boys, everybody? How extensive is that demographic?
Yeah, so it's really young women, young children, boys and girls, and it really depends on the trafficking situation. Sometimes it's just for a few months, and for some others it's up to a few years.
Okay, and so this has become part of your mission and part of your purpose for seeking elected office, to bring voice to this issue, is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
And what would be the, shall we say, what activities would you undertake to do that if you're elected?
Yeah, there are quite a few different areas that we can look into. The first, I think, is just to acknowledge it in our political discussion and conversation. It's not something that I see being made a priority. And the more that I've looked into this issue, we see that actually it's a symptom. Human trafficking is a symptom. One of the community advocates told me that anytime we see vulnerability, whether it's economic or it's cultural or between families, anytime there's a vulnerability, we see trafficking. So when we talk about the economy and when we talk about gas prices, when we talk about the different social fabrics that are tearing apart in California and throughout the nation, what we need to know is at the end of that, there are victims that are being trafficked as a result of poverty increasing, homelessness increasing, drug abuse increasing, crime increasing.
So those groups, this is homelessness, family problems, what have you, and perhaps runaways, that's the source of people who enter the trafficking industry. Is that correct?
I should say that they don't enter the trafficking industry usually in their own will. Most of the time it's through some sort of coercion.
Yeah, this is a huge problem. And last question I have about this in this topic, because we have 2 or 3 topics covered.
Sure.
How would I, as a citizen, recognize trafficking is taking place? Is there a way I can see it
Yeah.
or recognize it?
Yeah, so the first thing to recognize is obviously it's usually invisible, right? So what we need to do is look for the particular signs. Sometimes it's a child who should be speaking up about something. Obviously something is bothering them, but they seem quiet. And in those cases, it's good to be gentle and try and establish a relationship before making any accusations that might alienate them. Some more obvious signs of trafficking, sometimes there's physical abuse happening. So maybe in the summer when a child should be wearing short sleeves, they're wearing long sleeves to try and cover up that abuse. So there are lots of different trainings online that you can find. I can recommend a few resources as well. But just being aware, number one, that this is a problem happening in our society, and number two, finding the tools to try and equip ourselves to recognize those signs and report those signs can be very effective.
And who would I report them to?
There's a national trafficking hotline, and there's also the local police that can help. And the last that I'd say, there's quite a few community outreach programs here in the Bay Area. For example, we have Love Never Fails that actually helps women to reintegrate back into society. There are a number of different organizations like that that really try to help people at the source. You can speak to your local police as well, but I think the people, the community advocates that really help them to integrate society will provide the most holistic approach.
So tell me about the community safety side of things.
Sure.
You come from a Taiwanese family.
Yes.
You grew up in the United States here. Your family's
Yes.
from Taiwan. You have a lot of insights about that. And you recognize that there's some issues about community safety. Maybe you can give us an
Yes.
overview.
Yeah, so I'm a young woman. I have two younger sisters, and we get the sense that when we go to the grocery store, we're not safe. We get the sense that walking alone, my sister goes to San Jose State, walking alone feels dangerous for her. And we know that it's not just our own feeling, that women all across the Bay Area feel this way. I've talked to parents who feel this way, small business owners who don't feel safe in their own neighborhoods. There's this sense that there's growing crime, there's growing robbery, there's growing drug abuse, and that makes all of us less safe. Why is that? And why is it that after we've spent millions and millions of dollars into public safety and community safety measures, we haven't seen the result? We feel less safe after all of that has been done.
And the reason is?
Well, I think there's a general stance from coming all the way up to the federal government that we will not enforce our own laws. I think the southern border is an example of that, where we have not enforced the laws on our borders, and that gives this sense that we're not going to take care of our own citizens, and that makes all of us feel less safe.
Right. We have a special case here in California called Proposition 47.
Yes.
I think that's a contributor. Most people I've spoken to in this show have all voiced concern with the
Yeah.
outcome of Prop 47. Is that
Yeah.
also your main point?
I recognize the maybe the good intentions behind it, but the result of that, unfortunately, has been increased crime, increased robbery, and it has made citizens feel far less safe. Unfortunately, that's not a law that I can change at the federal level, but it is indicative of the overall soft stance towards crime, and surely we can find common ground on the good intentions and trying to make sure that the justice system works for everyone. But I just don't think that increasing the levels of allowed robbery is the way to solve that.
Yeah, well, the police have been, shall we say, given restrictions from either a loss of funding or multiple lawsuits
So
for every
many,
time something
yeah.
goes wrong. I don't know if that's how you see it, but it seems to be also creating an awful lot of caution on the side of the police enforcement side.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of enmity between our police officers and our community members, when I think that there should be utmost respect on both sides. And I think that will help to increase community safety.
You have a background in education.
Yes,
You started a tutoring business, is that correct?
I did.
At
Yes.
16 years old.
At 16. Yes. Courageous Communications.
Courageous Communications.
Yes.
And what was it all about? And tell me what you gained as insights from that business.
Yeah, I'll tell you the backstory. So my family is from Taiwan, and although my parents are both very highly educated, my mom didn't feel equipped to teach me English, writing, and public speaking. And so she felt that I was struggling around when I was 12. And I remember that feeling of, I knew I had to do something. I knew that something was wrong, but I didn't know how I could make it any better. I was really lucky a couple years later to find a wonderful writing teacher who really taught me to process my thoughts, to organize them, and deliver them clearly. And I wanted to give that same sense of empowerment to my students. So most of my students are here from the Bay Area, and many of their parents have a similar background to my parents' immigrant story, and wanting their students to be able to communicate their ideas clearly. I think that work finds its continuation now, which is we take our ideas of what we consider to be a beautiful society, a beautiful America, and talk about it. We talk about it. And we say, this is our seat at the table. We want to be a part of the conversation and make that happen.
If you're, let's just say you're in high school,
Yeah.
or you're in university and you never learned to write correctly, and now you have to write, is there a way for that type of person to gain writing skills?
Absolutely. And I
Yes.
think there is an even more important skill, which many adult learners and high school students actually have the ability to do, which is to think. With the advent of AI and ChatGPT, they can spew out paragraphs in seconds. But what it can't do is to think creatively and to think critically. So one thing that I do with my students is I just ask lots of questions. So I would say for your viewers or anyone who wants to learn more, just ask yourself questions. Well, why? Why don't I like Prop 47? Why don't I like what's happening at the southern border? What do I think it should be? And as you're mulling on those ideas and those perspectives, those angles, there are many tools out there. Grammarly.com, ChatGPT, as I mentioned, Bard. There are many, many sources out there that technology can help you to go that final mile, but technology cannot help you to think critically or creatively.
I'll add one last thing, just from my own
Sure.
experience. I found that I always struggle with the introduction.
Yeah.
Always
Oh,
struggle.
gosh. Yes.
So I don't write the introduction anymore. I write the story.
Yes.
And then when I'm done, I go
Yes.
back and I write the introduction.
That's one of my best tips for my students is if you get stuck here, just skip it and then come back. Yeah, because when you have more of the meat, then it's easier to add on the dressing.
That's very good.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Are you still doing that, by the way?
I am, yes.
Is that your main
Actively teaching.
business
Yes.
activity?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So now you're a tutor or an educator.
Yes.
It's a private tutoring business, I
Yes,
assume? Okay.
yes.
And is it remote or do you go to
I
people's?
do both. Yeah.
You do both?
I do both. Yeah, I do it remotely, and I also rent a studio.
Oh, you rent a studio?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And do you do one at a time or small groups?
Small groups and also one-on-ones. Yeah.
I got to ask you, how do you motivate? What age groups do you get?
Yeah, I get anywhere from 4th grade up to 10th grade now.
How long does it take for you to show results in their ability or their output?
Yeah, I see immediate results because of the system that we use. I try and make it as easy as possible for students to see the first step. But if I want to see lasting results where students know what they know and they can face any writing situation, it takes about 2 years.
I really want to ask you about this political process.
Sure.
You're going against a well-established incumbent. What's your sense of this? Is this your first foray into politics, or are you committing to politics? Or do you think you may pull this out?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would say is I didn't run because someone gave me permission or that the statistics said that I would win. I ran because I felt that there were stories that were untold and that absolutely needed to be added to the political discussion. The voice for the voiceless, for the trafficked individuals, primarily. But as I moved into this whole arena, I found parents who felt that they were voiceless, children who felt that they were voiceless, small business owners who felt that they were voiceless, seniors, gig workers, community members who felt our voice isn't being heard. And so my commitment as my first run is to say, I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen to your concerns, and if you give me the chance, I'll reflect it in Congress. I think this run sets a foundation to win hearts and minds for the long run.
You're very dynamic, and you got a great energy, and you worked
Thank
hard, and
you.
you've got the work ethic, and you were listening to people. So I think you're going to be an outstanding
Thank you.
political action person.
Thank you.
And I want to congratulate you on, at such a young age, having the courage, seriously, to take on a big position or to
Yeah,
run for a big
job.
position. You could have
Thank
run
you.
for school board, city council, any kind of
Yeah.
things like that. But you're going for the big time, and
Yes.
why not start big? You know?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful to my team and everyone that's wrapped around me to say, Anita, we will stand and fight with you.
So now you have a campaign. You're raising a little bit of
Yes.
money, maybe. You're
Yes.
getting volunteers to help you out. What's the best way for people to follow up and contact you?
Yes, please join us on our website. It'll be included here, and you can volunteer, you can donate, you can support, or just sign up to be updated on our campaign. It's www.anitaforcongress.org. US.
Anita, I really want to thank you again.
Course.
You've been a great guest. I think it's so admirable and so courageous. And,
Thank you.
that you're doing this, and I wish more people in your
Thank
demographic
you.
would do it too. So I want to wish you every success going
Thank
forward.
you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us in this episode. If you gained insights from this conversation, you can share this show with your network and ask them to subscribe. You can view all shows at our website, GameChangers.tv, as well as the podcast at Game Changers Silicon Valley. We look forward to your continued interest in upcoming shows.